Hi, I'm Maciej, I'm a software engineer. There is one thing that I don't like in recent compiler versions. I will show you. Let's say I have a simple color type with just 4 values. Red, green, blue and let's say X-rays. And let's say I have a very simple function that does something different for each of these values. If I forget about one of these values, for example X-rays, and I will cover only some of the possibilities, then the compiler will find it, and that's okay. But what if I know that X-rays never happen in this part of code, and it's actually written like that? The compiler is not smart enough to see this relation, even though everything is just few lines apart, and it still prints the warning. I could add the missing branch, or the default one, just to shut up the compiler, and the code will compile without warnings. But the code would not be any better with this. Actually, it could be worse, because it would contain a dead code, a code that could never be executed. It couldn't even be tested. Normally, programmers would comment such a piece of code to explain why it exists, but it would look like a human fighting with the computer. It should never happen. But why did it happen? It happened because the compiler tried to assess the quality of my code without understanding the bigger design context. The intention was good, but the result actually damaging. Why am I irritated by that? I'm irritated because I have a lot of open source code which I have written some time ago, and it compiled without any warnings. And recently it started to compile with warnings, not because the code became bad, but because compilers became smart. And potential users who try to compile the code on their own see the warnings and they get disappointed or even discouraged. And I don't like it. I have another example from a different compiler. Let's say I have a simple function that uses a variable x without initializing it first. The compiler can see there is a problem and it can show it, and I'm okay with it. But this example can be a little bit more complex. In this case, variable x is initialized and then used, and both of these actions are controlled by the same condition. The code is correct, but the compiler still complains that x can be used without being initialized, which is not true. Of course, I could add a dummy or defensive initialization, but this would only document my battle with the compiler. And from the point of view of data flow, this would be an error anyway. How did I learn about this example? Like before, my old code stopped compiling cleanly, not because it magically became bad with time, but because compilers try to do things that they cannot do properly. And finally, I am blamed for the warnings, and I don't like it. My message to compiler makers is this: please focus on language rules and code generation. Do not enter into the area of quality assessment, because quality cannot be judged in isolation without reference to the design and requirements. Quality of the source code cannot be checked on its own basis. Okay, the spring is coming, so I will stop complaining. I'm Maciej, I'm a software engineer. Write some good code and see you next time.